Hello and welcome to News by Standards. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has said that rail strikes could be easily settled by modernising antiquated working practices. He described calls for him to intervene to settle the ongoing dispute between the R&T Transport Union and rail employers as a red herring and a stunt. Outdated practices had to end for a resolution to be possible, he said. But the R&T Union said that Mr Shapps was talking complete nonsense. In an interview with the BBC, Mr Shapps acknowledged that he and the Treasury had set an overall mandate which dictated how much money was available and that he had final sign-off on what was agreed. But he said he didn't and shouldn't interfere with the detail of negotiations between the R&T and the industry, saying employers were the only people who could settle this strike. Thousands of members of the R&T who work for Network Rail and 13 train companies walked out on Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday last week. Half the rail network was closed on strike days, while the knock-on impact meant services were also disrupted on the following days. The union has warned more strike action could follow. The Transport Secretary told the BBC the dispute could easily be settled because there are so many modernisations from antiquated work practices. For example, 2 vans often have to be sent to a maintenance job when only 1 van is required. The R&T said in a statement prior to Mr Shapps' comments that sending several vans is both a safety and engineering standards issue. It would be pointless sending staff to a location without their gear, equipment and tools, which is why the vehicles and associated equipment are sent to site in more than 1 van. The Transport Secretary said we want to see an upgrade to our railways, make them digital fit for the 21st century. We also want to simultaneously need the working practices to come out of the 20th century. We can't have a digital railway and sort of steam age working practices going alongside of it. Mr Shapps accused unions of not allowing workers to fill in digital timesheets. Some train companies already have Sunday work as part of their normal rota, but he said the ones that don't need to. The R&T responded, Network Rail is intending to consult in the use of digital timesheets. We have not rejected them. We have no principled opposition to the introduction. We do use digital timesheets on other parts of the railways. It also previously said that in many companies we have agreements that Sunday forms part of the working week. The R&T has already rejected a pay offer totaling an uplift of 3%. Network Rail has insisted more would be possible if modernised working practices were accepted. It is said that 1,800 job losses that would come with those reforms could likely be achieved through voluntary redundancy, but the union is demanding a guarantee of no compulsory redundancies. Asked why a guarantee of no compulsory redundancies couldn't be put forward in writing, the Transport Secretary said it was something that R&T needed to discuss with employers. However, he added, in what business would you be able to say we will never have to lose anyone from their jobs? He pointed out that previous voluntary redundancy schemes have been oversubscribed. Mr Shapps refused to put a figure on what pay increase would be possible if all the proposed changes to working practices were brought in, nor would he say whether 7% would be too much. He acknowledged that he knew how much money was available for a pay rise, but insisted it was a matter for the employers in the negotiations. I can't discuss it on national TV. If I were to do that, I would effectively be intervening in those discussions. However, he added, what we do know is that we've got a spike in inflation. We do not see the build in the system and end up going forward with years as it did in the 1970s. Mr Shapps did not directly respond to the question of whether the government would be prepared to put in any more money if it provided the flexibility to prevent another strike. But he said we still have working practices which go back to the 50s and 60s and 70s, and that has to end. The strike can't be resolved without those things ending. He went on, there are so many things that are required to bring this railway up to date in terms of the working practices, then in a way that actually does provide the opportunities to get a good, decent settlement. He said because many people had spent 2 years working from home, the only people being hurt by strikes were people who have to go to work, the hospital porter, the cleaner, people who have no other option. Mr Shapps said the outcome of the dispute would affect how much fares would rise next year. If we want decently low fare rises, of course we have to have the costs of the railway lower, and that means running them more efficiently. And that's all. These working practices from the steam age that I'm afraid are time expired. Annual fare rises on regulated tickets are normally calculated using the UK RPI figure of inflation for July. RPI climbed to 11.7% in May. Next year's fare rise has not yet been determined.